Ever want to know what really goes on behind the scenes of a news station? Today we investigate Raw Fusion.
A typical night at the clubs.
Let's get raw.
You don't want to fall in love.
Let's get raw.
You got the fusion in your blood.
Let's get raw.
And to my ladies and my thugs.
Let's get raw. And to the haters on the scene.
Let's get raw.
Don't be mad cause we got green.
Let's get raw.
You should be trying to make the team.
Let's get raw.
Cause we taking everything.
Let's get raw.
Raw Fusion.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us today. A celebrity to a lot of people if you're in the Minnesota area. Should be a national celebrity. I mean, she's just that good, but we're going to get there. Her name is Georgia Fort, and she's on Raw Fusion. Welcome to Raw Fusion.
Hey, you like celebrity. I don't know if I say all that, but I'll take it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've done radio and television, a news anchor. Come on, you're a celebrity. Own it.
You know, I just feel like I have worked with so many people in my career who have these huge egos. And, you know, they can be rude, they can be disrespectful. And so I just told myself early on in my career that I wasn't going to operate in that capacity. So I just try to be humble, that's all.
With me, it's kind of the same way. I wanted to be the type of person that could be an asshole, but wasn't. You know what I mean? You know, just still be a good person. Although I have called myself an asshole when doing work, because my thing is, if you're not here to work, then you shouldn't be here. You know, when it comes to the business, I am kind of one of those that, one of those, you know, look, Michael Jordan, I didn't know he was so much of an asshole. I mean, on the court, but in order to achieve greatness, sometimes you have to be a hard taskmaster. You know, it's just no way around it sometimes. So let's tell everyone why you are a celebrity. You were on radio for a very long time, right?
That's correct.
And you had your own show, and that went so well that you eventually became a news anchor. I didn't even see that coming. We became friends when you were on radio. We talked a lot, and I was doing film. And we talked about, your goals and aspirations. I don't think once we said news anchor. How did that come about?
No. Yeah, the plan was not to be a news anchor, but the plan was to transition into television. And so taking the role of news anchor was a way to do so. I worked in broadcast radio for probably about 7 years, old school R&B, and then transitioned into hip hop radio when I moved to Columbus, Georgia. And it was there, I think, I just got really burnt out from all of the entertainment gossip. And, as I was getting older and being a mother and a single mother at the time, I just wanted more substance in my work. And suddenly being a reporter, something that felt really stuffy before and too serious, all of a sudden it started becoming attractive to me. And because I had, always done more than just radio. I had been modeling. I was also a TV personality for a couple of different companies in their marketing campaigns. I had also landed an entertainment segment on the news. So I was on the news every Friday at 5:30 and was working part-time actually at a public access television station. And so I think all of those things combined helped me be able to transition into news. And I mean, if you think back to those early days, like when we first met, I was doing a lot of on-camera interviews with celebrities at that time. And I was doing a lot of my own production and directing and editing. And so along the way, I had accumulated the skill set that's required to be a reporter. And so the transition was pretty seamless, but it definitely, total different vibe, total different personality. And like yourself, I think a lot of folks who used to listen to me, especially when I was in hip hop radio, got to see a totally different side of me and got to see how versatile, that I am. But I think back, when you were doing film, I was also trying to get my actor reel together. I just wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. So I was trying a lot of different things and trying to figure it out. But having that acting background and training makes it really easy to kind of get into character, so to say.
Yeah, I know some news personalities here. And well, let me say, I partied with some of them. Mm-hmm. Ooh, they would not. If there were cameras going on then, ooh, wee. And not as stuffy as you think they are. Although they have to be for TV. I know some, they can cut loose, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
You know. And you definitely, and I've been telling you, I mean, you know it. You have to. You definitely have a face for TV. You know, I've known some other radio personalities that, no. You meet them and it's like, yeah, you should definitely do radio.
That's
but
not
I've
nice.
seen it change. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's true. It's not nice, but it's true. And that goes back to the asshole part. You know, we have to be realistic. Sex sells, and if you're not really in the social accepted norm of beauty, you're not going to be successful in TV most of the time. And that's unfortunate, but then I think the responsibility lands on the people just as much as us in the business, because if you turn off the TV because the person isn't pleasant to look at, who's responsible? You know what I mean? It's just reality.
That's true.
So, you know, I talk all the time about, you know, okay, we can complain about the rap music, the movies. You know, I did a mafia film, a gangster movie. I did two. It was my most successful movie. I did a love story, a comedy. You know what they wanted? They wanted the gangster movie.
Of course.
So it's like, you know, if you want to ridicule us on this side, that's fine. And certainly a lot of the things that we do, and I'm including myself, you know, I've gone back and forth. Should I be putting this out, you know? But at the same time, you have a responsibility as a consumer as well, because if you don't buy it, we don't make it. You know, some of the things we do out of passion, but a lot of the things we do is simply because it's going to sell, you know? And
it's a business.
If you don't like it, don't buy it. It's business. If you don't like it, don't buy it. You know what I mean? And you can
or
stop
watch
a lot of the
it,
stuff
or
that's going on.
click on it, or share it.
Exactly. I digress. Anyway, it is a beautiful thing that you have the background that you do. I know we were talking about, I tried, ladies and gentlemen, I tried very hard to get her to come to Chicago.
Yeah, I remember that.
I wanted you to move. I still think that would have been a better move.
Well, I've been in Chicago. I have family. My grandmother owned a home for 50 years in Kankakee. My daughter's family's from Chicago Heights, Markham, Harvey area. Yeah. So, you know, and my husband now, I'm married, and he is from Chicago. So, I mean, it's, you know, just a couple hours. But if there was never like a substantial, you know, job that drew me there. And so I just couldn't justify just going to Chicago to chase a dream. And the weather's not even better. It's just as cold.
It's just as cold. But I will say, in defense again, you know, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a substantial amount of people have come here to this market and have gone on national.
Yeah.
I think you're better. I just really, I actually support you. You know, I'm not one of those fake people. If I like you and I support you, I really do support you. And, you know, but Lester Holt was an anchor here for a while, as far as radio is concerned, where we're talking about Tom Joyner and rest in peace, Doug Banks. I mean, it's a springboard. And I'm willing to bet you, with you, your personality, your looks, you would be national a couple years. You know, you'd be on the accelerated track. I just believe in you that much. I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm back in the Midwest now. So, Maybe there's some possibilities that I can make some road trips. I definitely have been leaning into a couple of different post boards that have opportunities I've seen come up in Chicago for Vox and Vice and other online platforms like that. So I definitely have thought about putting some, effort into getting out there and covering some stories independently. But in terms of like full-fledged moving, we grown. I need a job. So it's different.
Yeah, you got kids.
Yeah, the sacrifices you can make when you are, in college, fresh out of college, and then, 10 years post college. It's just a different thought process. So, I mean, I love Chicago. I enjoy myself every time that I travel there. And, it's a hop, skip, and a jump. So if it makes sense, why not?
Yeah, I understand, but I'm still gonna. I get you. I know you're making the right moves, but
show me the coins. Show me the coins, and I'll come.
I am not mad at you. That's why I said about this podcast. I'm like, they're like, well, they also do podcasts on video, and you can put it on YouTube. Hey, show me the money. Right now, I'm not getting paid for this shit. So you want me to get cute and all that kind of stuff? It comes with a price.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it does. I know that price.
Right. Now, I'm interested in what you're doing now. I see you running around with the camera. What is this? What are you doing?
What is it?
What's going on? What the heck is this? No, I've seen it, but I want you to tell the people.
Well, it's interesting because this is what I was doing when I was a reporter, but people didn't know that. So my official title when I was a news reporter was actually multimedia journalist, which is just a dumb fancy name for a reporter with their own camera. And so for 4 or 5 years, I clocked in 9 a.m., went to my editorial meeting, got my assignment, and I hit the pavement. And so it was my responsibility to book my interview or interviews, drive to them, film them, get whatever B-roll or supplemental media I needed for my report, come back, edit it, write it, put it in the system, grab all the live gear, go wherever my live shot was going to be, set up all the live equipment, go live by 5. And typically you're live at like 5:36. The news just repeats itself over and over every 30 minutes. And then when I was done with that, come back and transform my script that I had written for television into a AP web style version that I would then post on the web and share to social media. So basically you're from A to Z, you're packaging a story entirely like by yourself. And so when I entered into this space, which I kind of got pushed into, it wasn't like I really wanted to leave news. I was working in a really rural market, so there was only 1 or 2% African American, but I still felt compelled to, dig deep into that community, that small percentage, and find our stories. And so I ended up getting terminated 2 weeks after my story with the Duluth police chief aired. He went on camera. He did a one-on-one sit-down interview with me on camera for the first time, talking about his family's role in the Duluth lynchings. And so it was actually his great aunt who had falsely accused these Black circus workers of rape. And in turn, it incited this huge mob to break into the jail, get these guys out of the jail and lynch them in downtown Duluth. And so for me, I just thought, this was during the time when the Philando Castile verdict came out and Officer Geronimo Yanez was found not guilty. And so, clearly at that time in Minnesota, there were, and obviously it's escalated since George Floyd was murdered. But at that time, it was kind of like boiling, and we knew that there were tensions between police and communities of color. And so this story was extremely relevant at the time, but very problematic to be a Black person in a community where the police chief is a direct descendant of someone who incited lynchings, And so I did that story. 2 weeks later, my ass was fired. And they told me it was because I wasn't eligible for maternity leave, which was actually true. They found, a loophole, and my husband and I, we were recently married. We were expecting. I gave birth 11 months and 2 weeks into my contract. In order to be eligible for maternity leave under federal law, you have had to work for a company for 12 months. So despite being nominated for an Emmy and all of the ratings on every newscast that I anchored and produced, they didn't find a way to preserve my job and figure out a way to cover those 2 weeks. So they let me go. So I don't really think that it was fully because of me not being eligible for maternity leave. I definitely feel like it was retaliation for the type of stories that I wanted to tell. And since after I got pushed out, I kind of kept in touch with people there, and there was a couple other people of color who were pushed out as well. And so I didn't want to give up all that I had learned. I tried to get hired at the mainstream media stations in my hometown, because I was working 2 hours north of my hometown. So I came back to the cities, and across the board, it's just, there's a lot of systematic racism in Minnesota. And before George Floyd was murdered, I don't think people would fully understand what I mean. But now the world has been able to see that Minnesota is racist as hell. And so despite the fact that I've worked in the industry 12 years, 2 Emmy nominations, I've worked in multiple markets, I have a college degree, they told me I didn't have enough experience. But yet and still, I serve on boards as a professional. I serve on boards, Minnesota Society of Professional Journalists, Twin Cities Media Alliance, and through a lot of networking. I mean, I've met some of the producers at these mainstream stations, and one in particular is a white man who is in college, and he commutes from St. Cloud he's the weekend producer. So he'll commute, he'll go back to St. Cloud for the week. And then on Friday, he comes up to the cities and he clocks in. And so for me to, network and meet individuals like that, it's a slap in the face. And it's very apparent that, their hiring practices are discriminatory, because here you have a white man who has no college degree yet, absolutely no experience in the industry, and yet and still you can find a slot for him on the weekend. And here I am, 12 years into my career, 2 Emmy nominations, and you can't find an overnight slot, you can't find a freelance position, you can't find nothing. So I kind of leaned into, remember when Tyler Perry said, if they won't give you a seat at the table, make your own. So when you say, what is it that you're doing? That's what I'm doing. I'm just making my own table, because I'm tired of playing their game. I'm tired of trying to conform. And now I can call out all their bullshit. When I was working in mainstream media, I didn't have a choice on how I wanted to wear my hair. I had to wear my hair straight every single day. And it's extremely damaging when you're an African-American woman and you have to heat your hair multiple times a day. And I remember one day, not that I was trying to be defiant or rebellious, because I really loved my job at the time. But I actually had like a flat tire. I was having a bad day and I ran out of time. I just didn't have time to straighten my hair. And so I came into work with my hair curly, and they pulled me aside and they're like, yeah, you don't have our permission to change your image. You signed a contract that said that you would maintain the same image that we hired you with. And if you show up to work like this again, you will be reprimanded. And so now there's some laws to protect, situations like that from happening. But the industry has set a standard that Black women should conform to the European standard of beauty. And it's caused so many self-worth issues, self-confident issues, and even financial issues. Black women running out here spending $400 on hair, trying to get their hair done every other week. I mean, and it goes way deeper than imaging. When you talk about mainstream media, I remember covering an officer-involved shooting, and I had exclusive interviews with the family, with the mother. I was the first to break the story after it happened. And when I got back to the newsroom, my news director asked me to go pull, as a development on the story, go pull the criminal history of the man who was shot. And the man who was shot, number one, I could not refer to as a victim. You'll never hear a person who's shot by police referred to as a victim. But I was asked to go find his criminal history. And so my only card and my only line of defense at that time, as a journalist who really wants to advocate for my people and portray us in a better light, my only card was, okay, well then, to keep the story neutral and unbiased and balanced, I'm also going to go pull the history of the cop. 12 pages of complaints. 4 of them are racial profiling, but guess what? It never made the 5 o'clock news. And so it's stuff like that continues to perpetuate false narratives and, negative ideologies of who we are as a people. It's situations like that continue to uphold white supremacy. That cop got painted out to be a hero, and that Black brother ended up looking like a criminal and a thug. And it's not because that officer has a clean record or is any better of a human being than that Black man. It's simply because of decisions, editorial decisions that are made in newsrooms all across America to regurgitate police narratives. And so for me, I know that I can't be this forward and aggressive about changing the narrative working for mainstream media. And so I finally made a decision within myself that I don't want to work for them anymore, that I won't allow them to control my voice, to omit truth from the things that come out of my mouth. But hey, if y'all want to hire me as a freelancer and let me pop on your platform, I'll definitely do so, as long as I retain control and ownership of the thing that I'm creating. But I don't want to be an employee of any of these networks anymore, because they have some serious, deep-rooted, systematic issues that they need to filter out of the fabric of their company culture.
They are full of shit. I'll say it for you. We're going to get into more of just how full of shit they are when we come back with Georgia Fort right here, Raw Fusion.
Raw Fusion.
A lot of people don't understand why I'm still in Chicago. A lot of people don't understand why I made the moves that I made. Me having my TV show on PBS was great. One of the reasons it was great is because I owned the show. I did much of the things that you said you did. I had a half-hour show a week. So I had to do all of that stuff every week. And that's another reason that I got the hell out of there, man. I mean, it's just, you really don't have a life. You just don't have a life. It's all TV. You're in pre-production for one show, production on another show, post-production on another show, all in the same week until the season is over, just basically. And people don't understand. Now, I wasn't in the position that you were in, where people were telling me what to do. I mean, we had conversations on things with the brass, but for the most part, I did what I wanted to do. And then they would have to convince me first that if I was going in a direction that probably, and they were probably right. And it was only one time. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But for the most part, I did what I wanted to do. They were great. Most of the time, it's not that sweet. And people are being told what to do. When we look at the political arena, that's why a lot of my views politically are different from a lot of our people. And you still may not agree with me, even if you're not influenced. But I know the truth. And the truth is that most of these stations are controlled by Democrats. And if you come up with any kind of narrative that doesn't support the candidate that they are supporting, yeah, you're not going to have a long time there. That's big because they try to put out certain things that supports the candidates when it's supposed to be neutral. That goes along with saying what you were saying. if you are reporting the news, you should be, in my opinion, neutral. If you are going to do an opinion show, that's different. But if you are reporting the news, report the goddamn news and leave your opinion out of it. And all too often, even if it's not the reporter or the anchor, it's some producer somewhere telling you, okay, we need you to do this. You're supposed to do this. And that is because they are supporting, whether it's the owners or their own political positions on certain issues. I'm glad that you were able to come on and say what's really going on behind the scenes, because they know how much influence they have. Let's be frank. We tell people what to do all the time in TV. We just do. That is the reason why people spend so much money on advertising, because we're telling you, go buy this, go buy that. And people say, it doesn't work. Bullshit. That's the reason why they spend millions of dollars a year, because we're telling people what to do. I'm sorry you brought up that dude dressing up in a dress. I'm sorry. I appreciate the business that he's done, but that bullshit about guys in dresses, 10 years ago, however you feel about it, 10, 15 years ago, guys in dresses was not acceptable. Then this guy shows up and everybody's laughing, it's joking, it's playing. Next thing, and I saw it coming. I said, see, this is where the bullshit starts. And now, let him dress up in the dress. Matter of fact, let's put the little boy in the dress. Oh, it's that cute. Woo, woo, woo. See, we're telling you what to do. We're telling you what's acceptable. If you don't like gay people, now you're ostracized. 10, 15 years ago, if you were gay, you were ostracized. Now, I don't think the gay people should be beaten up or whatever. I thought that was tragic when it would happen. But at the same time, you shouldn't be teaching little kids, in my opinion, anything sexual, let alone an quote unquote alternative lifestyle, because it has to do with sex. Kids, leave that out of it, and they're pushing towards that. And then there's the reports about people, in Hollywood that are involved in the pedophilia and things of that nature. Come on, man. And people, and I see people now saying there's no way in hell we're going to normalize that. But I saw people 10, 15 years ago saying we're not going to normalize gay people. So we have to be careful, because you may have some pedophile somewhere who is quiet, but he's running a news station. He's producing a television show. And next thing you know, that shit's going to creep in. Ellen lost her job because she came out as gay. 10, 15 years later, she's one of the biggest people on TV. So that's how powerful this medium is. And people don't get it. You're in people's homes every night, every day, once a week, whatever it is. They think they know you, and they don't know anything about you. And if you continue to say something because they feel like they know you, hey, well, maybe I should change my opinion on this. Psychologically, they're doing something back there, and they know how much power they have. So if they're going to say, we want to keep ourselves in line with the cop, so we're going to skew this thing, this bullshit. It's thugs, these little code words they say, these thugs, these animals, these, But then when the cops do something, they're stand-up cops, we should support the cops and all this bullshit. Even when they're wrong. I'm not against cops. I've got cops as friends. But there's no way in hell that you're going to tell me that anywhere in business, anywhere, there aren't some bad ones. And when you align yourself with the bad ones, it makes you kind of bad. And that kind of thing goes on every single day in the newsrooms across America. I see it because I'm in the business. A lot of other people don't see it and think I'm just being paranoid or bullshitting, or I have an agenda. I do have an agenda, and my agenda is for me and my people. Period. But it may not coincide with what you think it should, because you have been influenced by the media.
Right.
And it's so, the news is so disgusting to me now, because at some point it was about getting the story right, and being somewhat neutral and presenting the facts. I think maybe before I was born, but now it's all bullshit.
Yeah, and I think about that a lot too, just about like what it used to be and was the intent ever pure. But when I think about the inception of media and I think about blackface, I feel like we since the inception of media have been falsely portrayed, negatively portrayed. And so I don't know if the intent was ever pure, if the intent was ever to, fully get the story right, maybe by individual journalists. But even going back to like, this is a business, there's a saying in news, if it bleeds, it leads.
It leads, yep.
When you do positive stories and your ratings go down, why would you keep doing positive stories? And that's why people say, oh, I hate the news. I never see nothing good on the news. You never see nothing good on the news because it's been eliminated from the newscast because it doesn't perform well. And at the end of the day, it's a business. It's just like if I sold a red bag of Skittles and a yellow bag of Skittles and people bought the red one more, why would I keep making the yellow one if the red one sells more? It's a business. They do what makes them money. They don't do the right thing, and I also recently, after the murder of George Floyd and seeing how that whole thing unfolded through the media, but then also being on the ground here in the Twin Cities in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and seeing how it unfolded in real life. The first, and you can go back and search this, the first narrative that was published was that George Floyd died of medical complications during an altercation with police. He did not die of medical complications, and that has been proven by an independent investigator.
It was a medical complication. Someone's foot was on his neck and he couldn't breathe. That's a medical complication.
Well, what the police were saying was that he had a health issue, and the health issue is what caused him to die. But clearly, we all saw the video. We are all witnesses, and we all know what happened. And we know that it's not true that the cause of death was an underlying health issue.
Exactly.
But because of the way the media system works, meaning the police department, every police department in America has a public information officer. That is the person who has been hired by the department to be the designated person who communicates with the media under any circumstances. And so the process is that they write a press release whenever something occurs to inform all of the media of what happened with details. And 9 times out of 10, that information is not questioned. I really want to say 10 times out of 10, but I want to give some people the benefit of the doubt. But typically that information is copied and pasted into a web script that goes out to the world to see. A lot of times that information is copied and pasted into an anchor script, which is then read and broadcasted to anyone who has access to that network. And so journalism is supposed to be something that is objective. It's supposed to be something that, and what it boils down to is that police and other state agencies and other government agencies have been put into a category of trusted, credible sources. And so journalists are not required to do any additional investigation or fact checking anytime that they receive information from a state agency or a police department. And so that information is just assumed to be accurate and true, when oftentimes we have seen over the course of the history of our country that state agencies have lied and shared false information to cover their asses, that police departments do the same thing. And so instead of the media keeping its integrity intact and identifying that government agencies have a history of publishing information that is not always accurate and saying, hey, let's be objective about this information, the same way that we're objective about sources from the community, the same way when a Black person walks up and says, hey, here's a tip, you have to go and vet it. Well, vet these state agencies, vet these government agencies, vet what the police are saying, have some processes in place to not always take their word. You could look back at you know, what happened to the Tuskegee Airmen. There's documentation that was issued to cover up all of those facts, you know, and so over the course of American history, we have seen, you know, state sanctioned agencies, government agencies continue to produce communications that are shared with media entities that are just false and cover up the wrongdoing and the harm that they have caused to communities of color. And until the media industry can rectify that and treat government agencies' communications with the same diligence that they treat information that comes from the community, until that can be balanced and fair, until that process can be the same and they vet their information the same way they vet our information, we're going to continue to have unbalanced reporting. And so that's why when you talk about the inception of media and was the intent there to be balanced, it may have been, but come on, there were so many red flags decades ago that you can't trust all of these sources that you choose not to vet.
I don't believe that it was every time right. I don't. I think there was more of what I was saying with that is that I think there was more of get to the story and tell the story without all of the commentary. Although you're right. Now that I think about it, they probably didn't even do that right. But here's the problem. And that's why independent media is so important. Hopefully, if you have someone with integrity, they'll try to get it right, and they'll be able to get it right. But when you talk about mainstream media, quote unquote, here's the problem. The government, for all its bullshit about free speech, still has to grant them a license to be on television or radio. As long as they have the power to pull that license, are you really going to get the real truth? I mean, just think about it for a second. If the government really thought that you were giving so much information out to the public that it was a point of national security, well, at least they could say it was, would they get a license again? Their whole station could be pulled. The government still has the power to pull it. Yeah, you can go off on Trumpy boy because a lot of people don't like him. You can go off on one individual, but if you start exposing systematic racism throughout the entire government, it quote unquote, if it exists, do you know how easy it is for them to pull their license? And so you have to think about that. If you have to bullshit about free speech and free media, how free is it when you have to get a license from the government in order to do it?
Yeah, that's real.
They want you to stop driving. They just pull your driver's license. Now, you'll probably drive anyway. But if you get caught, you know, there's consequences. In media, they can pull your license and you just won't be on television anymore. And they can do it. They have the power to do it. Look at JFK. You know how long it took for that information to come out? And he's still kind of iffy and bullshitting about it. Why? Because it implicates the president being in on the murder of another one, a vice president at the time, being in on the murder with the mob on another one. How long did it take for that to come out? Years. You know why? At this point, it doesn't matter. Oh, it's a cool, juicy story, you know. But then, at the time, what would that have done to the national security? Anybody that probably had that information then, license would have been pulled if they put that out there. Easy. Then you have the goddamn FCC that sits over all the shit that comes out. So that's why independent media is important. The problem with independent media is, well, if you don't have a history in mainstream media or you don't have the resources to vet things, you could just be some guy bullshitting or woman sitting out here bullshitting and saying whatever the hell they want to say. Free speech, but is it true?
Right.
So now it becomes even more hard for the people to vet, and most people aren't going to vet this type of information. So this is the problem that we have. I don't believe we have a free media. No, damn well we don't have free speech. And so how do we fix that when the government controls the media?
I mean, I don't know if we can fully fix that system, but what I see happening and what I'm certainly working towards is creating alternatives to that system. And so with the shift in social media and the development of technology, less and less people are watching newscasts and they're becoming less relevant. We just had two newspapers close their doors this week, actually, in the cities here. And so
It's because people don't read.
yeah, print is industry
Dead.
that is dying. News, I believe traditional television newscasts, could definitely be at risk of dying as well, because I don't know if two generations after us, if they will be interested in consuming information the way that we did and the way that our grandparents did. Social media has changed the game. Media consumption, the duration of media consumption is down. And so you see entities like Quibi that are popping up and changing the format. Traditional television format, you have a 30-minute show and a 60-minute show. And those are broken up with, 2 to 4 commercial breaks in between. And so from a production standpoint, that you don't actually have to produce a full 30-minute show. You minus the amount of time that the commercials, take up. And then you cut up your episode into, a couple of little bits. And if you're smart and the placement of where those commercial breaks are going to go, you're going to leave a cliffhanger right before you go to commercial break that's going to require your audience to stay around to see the resolve after the commercial break if you're a good producer, right? But on social media, because that's not how social media works, and because everybody's watching stuff on YouTube, like Quibi is saying, hey, we're not even going to do that. We're going to reduce our episodes. The episode isn't even 30 minutes anymore. An episode is like 8 minutes, and that's long. That's considered long form to younger generations who are on TikTok, and all of these other platforms that are 60-second snippets of life. And so, I think that, the FCC definitely controls, the airwaves and television broadcasting, but we're seeing more leniency on XM. We're definitely seeing leniency online. And I think that it's only a matter of time before the online platforms end up outperforming and reaching a wider audience than the traditional platforms. And
I think they're doing it already.
Yeah. And when you even think about your capacity, FM radio, AM radio, and television broadcasts are typically limited to who they can reach because of a signal. And so they can only service a geographical area that has a set population. When you publish online, when you publish digitally to the World Wide Web, you have the power to reach the entire globe, or at least anyone who has access to internet and internet compatible device. So you have the potential to reach far more people, and therefore can be a much more powerful tool. But I do think that the government is in the process of trying to figure out a better way to limit and oversee and control these platforms as well. They haven't done that successfully yet. But I mean, you raise a very, very valid point of, traditional platforms being predominantly controlled by government entities. And the other thing I thought about when I was listening to you talk was, you mentioned like free press and freedom of speech, which is protected under the First Amendment. And during the uprising, witnessing the reporter, the CNN reporter Omar be arrested here in Minneapolis while he was reporting live on the air for CNN, which is one of the most well-known and respected news outlets in the world. And to see him arrested while his white counterparts were holding the camera, and nothing happened to them, it was really eye-opening to, for me as a journalist of color in this time, thinking that what I do is protected under the Constitution, and seeing that because of the color of your skin, that can be questioned.
Here's the thing. If you haven't seen her, right, because they have this color thing. She is light bright, okay? So it doesn't matter. You can be dark, light.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You know, that's not going to give you a pass. She's still going through a lot of bullshit, and because of the color of her skin. So we got to stop this light dark bullshit. You know what I mean? If you are considered a certain color, they don't see the difference. We may sometimes, but they don't see the difference. The other thing is this. Yes, they are trying to. I think net neutrality was one of the first steps. These people plan years ahead. You know, so they have a plan already in place. They just have to wait for the right time. You know, even when we get down to things of the New World Order, the first Bush was talking about the New World Order. Now we're getting to digital currency, which is one of the steps towards the New World Order, in my opinion, simply because when they get to digital currency so well to where they're starting to talk about, oh, we don't need paper money anymore. Well, now it's just the next step to first controlling and knowing exactly where every dollar you spend goes and what you do, tracking. You can't go off the grid if they do that. You just can't. Then, well, since we're on digital, let's make it all one, like Bitcoin or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Let's just make it a global currency. Well, now once the money goes there, the control does too. And part of it is that America has to go down in order for New World Order to go up. And that's why we're seeing the decline of America. A lot of people don't see that, you know, because they're not looking for it. They're not being told to look for it. It's important to realize what's really going on. These people, again, they don't plan like we do. We plan 5 years ahead, 10 if we're really into it. They plan decades ahead. You know, look at these presidents. They come in and they make orders that won't kick in until after they leave. That goes to show you what's going on, you know, and we have to wake up and start seeing what's going on, not only your business and my business, but in the world. You know, there's a lot of bullshit happening right now, and we are stuck upon race. Why? To distract us. But we are not going to allow ourselves to be distracted. But we are going to take a break. And we'll be back. In the meantime, make sure you check out Georgia at GeorgiaFort.com, on social media, Georgia Fort or by Georgia Fort, and we'll be back more with Georgia right here on Raw Fusion.
Raw Fusion.
When everything went down in Minnesota, yeah, I looked at some mainstream media. Very little, though. And I don't know why CNN is respected. They're a bunch of idiots. Sorry, but they are. I didn't really look at mainstream media as much. I went on Facebook and I looked at the live broadcasts or whatever you want to call it, from people on the ground. So when it came with this bullshit about the people just started looting and started this and started that, I had already seen that the cops had started shooting the tear gas and the rubber bullets and all that shit at people when they were being peaceful. I saw peaceful people protesting. Yeah, they were yelling and calling names and all that kind of shit. Again, free speech. The first instance of violence I saw on the live, and I watched several, was from the police. So the bullshit narrative that CNN and the others came up with, I didn't believe because I saw it live. And I'm talking about, I didn't just pop in for 5 minutes. I sat there, turned the TV, the rest of the shit off, and just watched those lives for hours because I wanted to see what was going on. For real. And I do not trust mainstream media anymore. I'm not saying that I really did, but after my experiences being in the back rooms, those people are biased. And I call out CNN. MSNBC is another one. They are just clearly biased. And if you listen to anything they say, really, seriously. Fox News is another one. They're on the other side, and they're clearly biased. And you can't really listen to anything they say either. I don't even know of one that is really, really neutral. They all pick sides. Well, the 24-hour news cycle networks. Here's the thing. We have to wake up and we have to demand more. Just like you said, if people are buying the red M&Ms or Skittles, why in the hell would you sell the yellow ones? You know, being a film director myself, I struggle with this issue. The things I want to do, and I have to, before I do it, think, will I make my money back on this? I mean, I will write anything. But when it comes time to what I'm going to produce that I've written, yeah, is this going to bring money or not, is the question. I have to put on two hats. I have to put on the artist hat and just be free and do what I love and, you know, just explore. Then I have to put on the business hat because whose money is being put up for this? Mine. You know, I don't have a team of investors. Never really wanted that because simply if they're putting up the money, guess who has the control? So we have to think about what we are consuming. What are we allowing people to program us with? You know, the brain is like a computer. It can be hacked. And what are we going to allow? What are we going to watch? What are we going to support with our dollars or our time? You know, at some point, we have to realize that because the people on the other end, where we are, we have to think about that. At some point, we just do. You know, if we want to eat and be able to continue to do what we do, we have to think about that at some point. You know, it's great that people are running around and they're able to give their perspective and their point of view on several different things. But if you're going to make this a career, if you're going to be able to, unless you're independently wealthy, if you're going to be able to dedicate yourself to this, the question has to be, will this sell? Are we going to get the views that we need? Are we going to be able to get the advertising? You know, that's the part that we didn't even talk about. Hell with FCC and the government. If you can't get any advertisers, you're not getting paid, you know, for most of this shit. I mean, if you have like a subscription-based business, but most of those are movies and things of that nature. We're talking about news. Hey, if everyone pulls their advertising away from you, what do you have? No show. So, I mean, this system is great, or the potential to be great, but there are too many things that will corrupt this system, and I don't know if I see a way out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think accountability is a form of love and definitely necessary to move the industry forward.
Georgia Ford, I love this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
I'm so happy. I know you got other things to do than talk to me all day. So I'm gonna let you go, but I am so appreciative. We kind of changed the format today. Usually we have a hot topic question and a lot of different things, and it's you're the hot topic today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. And thank you for coming on. And continued success with everything that you're doing. Go check her out. Definitely. You just want to see her. She's a looker, I tell you. But then listen to what she has to say and what she's doing. And that's why I was so excited. You know, I've seen a lot of beautiful women in my life being a photographer. I am so happy when the beauty on the inside matches the beauty on the outside, maybe even supersedes the beauty on the outside and the intelligence. That's what excited me about having you on the show. Thanks, Georgia.
Thanks, King.
It's time to talk some shit with King B on the King B's Raw Fusion podcast. What are we prepared to do? Because the only people that are going to change this is us as consumers. You know, I'm on one side, but I'm on the other. I still watch TV, watch a lot of it because it's part of my business and because I enjoy it. So what are we prepared to do? Are we prepared to turn off the shit that offends us? Do we even know that we're being offended? People are cattle. I've heard that so many times. You know, we tell them what to do and they're going to do it. This is the attitude in the back rooms of many of these media outlets. That's really what it comes down to. That's the reason why we can talk about drugs. We can talk about drugs. We can talk about murder. We can talk about violence against women and get away with it. Why? That just amazes me. How is it that we make celebrities out of these people and then they go on to do commercials and have TV shows and all this stuff behind criminality? What are our kids going to look like in this environment? And of course, we can talk about parenting and things of that nature, but at some point, your kid goes out of the house. And at some point, they're being influenced some kind of way by their environment. So even if you do a hell of a job parenting your child, what are the other influences that they're going to have to deal with? At some point, we have to start thinking about what are we allowing to influence not only ourselves, but the next generation, the generation after that. And if we're at this point now, what's 50 years going to look like? What is our community going to look like in 50 years? And what are we doing now to change the trajectory? Because right now we're on a downward spiral. And what are we doing? What are we doing with the power that we have? We got to stop thinking about ourselves so much. And what can we do moving forward to make a better world for those that come after us? I'm King B, and this is Raw Fusion. Raw Fusion.